Foundations of Education, Teaching as Profession, and Research. She is a full-time instructor at the College of Education and Graduate School of Bulacan State University. She is now holding the position of Assistant Director for Teaching and Learning Technologies and the Graduate School Director, or the Graduate School Director rather, for research, extension, and publication. She has written several researches published in international journals. Her researches are published in international research journals indexed in Thomson Reuters and Web of Science and published by Elsevier Science Direct. She is also a member of the Scientific Committee of International Conferences, like the International Conference on E-Education, E-Business, E-Management, and E-Learning, that is in Japan, and International Conference on Education organized by the International Institute of Knowledge Management, that is in Sri Lanka, and also a peer reviewer on international scientific journals such as Emerald Publishing and Australasian Journal of Educational Technology, among others. Teachers, school leaders, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our third resource speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Jocelyn M. Santos. Good afternoon, Doc, and welcome once again to Magister Servus.
Hello, good afternoon, Ma'am Jesseline and the other officials of the Magister Servus. Okay, so I'm staying here for a while. So I'm hearing the participative audience or attendees in this webinar. Okay, so I know that you have learned a lot and nakita ko yun, na-share nyo na in your created modules, and it's already applied about the self-regulated learning. Now, let me discuss with you some of the strategies that you may use so that you can still enhance your pedagogy, your activities also in your module. Okay, so let me greet you with this photo image. You're never fully dressed without a smile. So even that I am not seeing you, I hope that you are smiling. Okay, so this is a very good day. It's Sunday, October 31. Okay, so before anything else, let us have first this one. I have here a very short activity wherein you have to type the first thing you see in the following pictures, and I want you to remember 5 pictures lang to, and then I want you to remember the things that you have seen first in each picture. So you may use the chat box in typing the first thing that you see in each picture. Okay, so let us start. So what do you see now? Yung unang-una po talagang makikita ha. So you will just type that in the chat box. So later on, we have an interpretation. Okay, so most of them, they are saying that they have seen a bird, wing, lion. Okay, so later on, we're going to know what's the meaning if you have seen first the bird or the lion. Okay, and then how about the second one? What do you see first? Yes, duck. Oo, so ang dami na duck, duckling, yung una nilang nakikita. Baby duck. Okay? So yun lang nakikita niyo. Wala kayong ibang nakikita dito? Meron pa. I don't see, puro duck yata nakikita. Yun, so si Sir Nick, tama ba Sir Nick? Yan, rabbit. Okay, syempre may color pink and white din po dito. Okay, how about this one? What do you see first? Okay, crocodile. What else? Eagle. So there are 2 images here, crocodiles and eagle. The next one. Okay, so yes, wolf, a tail, lion, wolf, dog tail, 1 leg. Ayan, okay. So tandaan niyo po yung nakita niyo ha. This one. What do you see? Batman. What else? Meron pa? Yan, si Wolverine. Okay. So let us see. I hope you still remember the first thing that you see in each picture. Let us have the interpretation. So this is according to psychologists. So what is the meaning of the result? So if you have seen the lion first, ito daw, so ibig sabihin you're getting to the roots of things. You are not afraid of facing your strongest fears. Wow, ito yung matatapang, di ba? Courageous. And then when you see an exotic bird, perhaps sometimes you are a bit lightheaded. Parang sometimes you are disoriented, okay? And sometimes even irresponsible. Pag yun daw yung una mo nakita. And at the same time, you have a creative personality and the desire to change the world for the better. Siguro gulong-gulo na sa mundo, okay? So next, when you see first a duck, kasi there are two images, duck and rabbit. So if you first see the duck, it's possible that your life consists of emotional impulses. You often have rapid mood swings and you tend to make decisions abruptly. So try to reflect na lang. And kapag rabbit naman, you like considering all the consequences of each action. Logic usually takes the first place in your life. So yun daw yun kapag first image that you have seen is a rabbit. And then, the crocodiles, okay? And then, a bird. So kapag nakita mo agad yung crocodiles, always trying to keep the situation under control and be in charge of everything. Di ba may mga ganun tayo na parang tayo yung leader, tayo yung boss, okay? And then a bird, perhaps you don't mind being led through steep and toilsome ways of this life to stars. This doesn't mean that you don't have your own opinion, but you yield to others and try to make a compromise quiet often. Okay, that's why you are so frank and sociable. Okay, so kapag bird ang una nakita, pero parang kanina, karamihan nagtatype, crocodiles yung unang nakita nila eh. Okay, eto bonus lang naman. Ay, hindi pa pala. Ito pala, yung fourth picture. Pag yung dog snout naman, analyzing the picture in a regular way, emphasize, this doesn't mean that you are an ordinary person, but emphasizes your logical way of thinking and the natural bent for consistent analysis of reality. Okay? And then, kapag naman ang unang nakita, dogs, leg and tail, if you analyze the picture, ito yung makikita mo. Pero yung kanya dog snout, ito yun, oh, di ba? So this, you probably like more original decisions. You just like applying a creative approach. Okay? So, base yan sa una yung nakikita. And then this one is bonus daw. Pag una mong nakita, mas marami sa inyo una nakita, yung si Batman, yung dalawang Batman, okay? So, ibig lang daw sabihin nun ay fan kayo ng DC Comics, okay? And you adore the Dark Knight. Di ko naman kasi masyadong alam to kasi I am more on Wolverine eh. Big fan ako ng Marvel, nothing pleases you as much as enjoying Tony Stark's charisma, di ba? Si Iron Man, Captain America's great endurance, or Wolverine's heavy look. Okay? So, kaya hindi ko masyado itong DC Comics. Okay? So, thank you for participating. Ayan, favorite daw si Wolverine, sabi ni Sir Ruben. Okay? Ayan. So, thank you po for participating in our activity. So, let me proceed now to our discussion all about the self-regulated learning strategies. There's a lot of strategies, but I'm going to discuss some of the strategies based on a study, result of a study. Okay? So these are my subtopics as discussed a while ago. So the self-regulated learning strategies in an online distance learning, in an offline distance learning, or modular distance learning. So there are times na pwede nyo na rin i-mix yung discussion ko kasi I have heard ang DepEd ngayon, I do not know what's the DepEd memo, no? Kasi baka tanungin din ako. But I am not aware, but when I'm talking about I am discussing these things about with the principals of the DepEd, sabi nila, ma'am, hindi na po kasi pwedeng ano na lang kami, parang a sole approach. Now, dati puro module lang. Dapat daw ngayon may tinatawag silang blended. So, ang blended nila is a combination, of course, the existing modules, and then at the same time, gagamit daw sila ng ibang modality. And it could be recorded videos, it could be online distance learning. Okay? Ayan. So, according to Zimmerman, 2001, the self-directed process through which learners transform their mental and physical abilities into task-related skills. Kaya nga, di ba, yung module nyo talaga hindi pwedeng mawawala doon yung task eh. Kasi that is something that we know that the student is self-regulated if the student is performing the task. Okay? And then another thing, if a self-regulated learner, independent learners, di ba? Ability, they have the ability to control their learning. And then plans and studies in advance to obtain high scores in tests. So na-imagine nyo na ba yung mga estudyante nyo ganyan? And uses strategies to recall instruction. So from the term self-regulated, and then you're going to see na ito yung description of a self-regulated learning. Sana masasabi mo na lang sana all. Sana all ng student, di ba? Ganyan. Sana lahat self-regulated learners. Okay, now, based from the description of the self-regulated learner, kindly type a specific action of a self-regulated student. Now, I know that there are some students, maybe your children, you are thinking na, self-regulated pala yung estudyante na yun. So how are you going to know that your student or even your own children are self-regulated learners? What do you think are their specific actions? Can you type in the chat box? How are you going to know that your student is self-regulated learner? How are you going to know that your child is a self-regulated learner? So can you type some actions of a self-regulated student? Diba, ang dami nyo nang na-discuss and I think nag-start kaya ata kayo ng Friday, ano? Okay? And you have learned a lot about self-regulated learning. So how are you going to describe? Can you think of a specific action of a self-regulated learner? Meron ba? Ayan, engage. Ang dami na pala. Hindi ko lang pala na-scroll down. Ano? Excited to accomplish. Yes, good study habits. Problem solver. Okay? Less supervision. Yes, motivated to study. Kaya nga mapapasana all ka na lang because we are aware that not all of our students are self-regulated learner. That's why we are looking for different strategies on how are we going to help them to become self-regulated learner yan. With perfect attendance, very specific ang sagot ni Sir Ruben, ha? Okay, with perfect attendance. Ito yung bumabagyo na, pumapasok pa rin ng face-to-face. Okay, ngayon, paano? Can easily follow instruction. Yes, can manage his or her time. Na kailangan naman talaga ng mga students. Yes, achiever. Ito yung you are not pushing the students, ano? Pero sila mismo, yun ang gusto nila. They want to be the best. They really want to produce quality outputs. So ito yung mga klase ng estudyante na self-regulated learners. Okay? So these are self-regulated students. First, yan yung mga sagot nyo. Independent, diligent in listening. Diba? The discussion of the teachers, focus on doing their task inside the classroom, gets high scores in tests, able to recall teachers' instruction and facts lectured in school, okay, and submits quality work. Okay, so yun yung kapag na-imagine ko, no, talaga may mga estudyante tayong ganito. How do you describe a challenging student naman? Okay, alam na alam nyo ang self-regulated learners eh. How about challenging students? Sige, tingnan ko, may nagta-type na ba? How do you describe a challenging student inside the classroom? just agree all the time. Wala man lang feedback from them, just nodding. Oh, yung simple pa lang gano'n, nare-recognize nyo na challenging student kasi you do not know what the students are thinking eh. Kasi hindi naman sila nakikipag-communicate. Yes, wandering, needs supervision, absent-minded, has difficulty in learning, yes, less engaged. And these are the kinds of students challenging us. Okay? Kaya tama yung mga sagot nyo. Miss assignments, di ba? Ito problema natin. We always ask questions. Paano pag hindi nag-pass? Ano gagawin natin? Di ba? May mga ganyan tayong questions. Inattentive during lectures, volatile during class activities, fails to recall instructions. Parang kabaligtaran talaga siya ng self-regulated learner. Submits poor work, and worst is not submitting any work at all. Okay? So, and we know, ayan, sukin in home visitation. Naku, thank you, sir. Ay, si Sir Ruben talaga, lagi ko nakikita yung sagot niya. Tama, sukin ng home visitation. Thank you for visiting our students. Oo. Quick to answer without thinking. Okay? So these are the students challenge us. Diba? We are thinking na sinasabi natin sana all self-regulated learners, but the reality is there are also some, or we can say most of our students are challenging students. They are really challenging us because they're really trying, para they are really testing us. So yung patience natin, that's number one eh. Okay, there are various contexts where self-regulation can be practiced. Actually, self-regulation is also being practiced in sports to regulate one's performance in health to attain potent physical condition, di ba? And another thing, in the industrial setting naman to determine effective employees and in managing one's emotions for emotion regulation, and of course in learning in the academic context. And if you're going to look at these different various contexts wherein self-regulation can be practiced, makikita mo dito na dapat what do we have to develop among our students is discipline. 'Di ba? Yun eh. For example, sa sports, if you are not a disciplined player, you cannot have a good performance, lalo na if you are playing a team sports. Diba? Even in health, dapat they are also disciplined in taking healthy foods. Okay? And in industrial setting, determine effective employees. And how can you become effective employees? And dami mo rin challenging co-teachers. Di ba? Ang dami mo rin challenging colleagues. Di ba? Talaga really challenging us. And of course, our students. Okay? And learning in the academic context now, which we really have to focus because in the basic education, you really have to help your students. Hindi ko naman sinasabi because I'm teaching in the higher education, we are not helping our students anymore, but the level of our students are different, 'di ba? Mas mature na yung sa amin, and they already knew what they are doing and why they are there in the university. Unlike yun yung mahirap sa inyo, yung sa sitwasyon ng basic education. Kaya ako, hanga talaga ako in the teachers, to the teachers of the basic education. Kaya ako, siguro di ginangay sarili ko kasi umalis ako sa secondary education. Okay, so in the academic setting, one of the main goals is to develop students to be self-regulated learners. Diba? Yan yung pinaka-main goal natin kasi we do not want to always be challenged. Mas haya-hayang buhay, mas madali ang buhay kung ang lahat ng estudyante natin ay parang nasa first section. Diba? Do you have the same thinking? Kung yung section ninyo, merong first section, yung mga nasa first section, yung masasabi natin self-regulated learners, but not all sections are first sections, 'di ba? Okay, kaya yun ang iintindihin natin. Okay? Now, in self-regulated learners, so we have discussed na they are independent, they can control their own learning, and they carefully plan their actions, set goals, use a variety of strategies na kapag nagbigay ka ng task, talagang pag-iisipan nila yan. How they're going to make the output with quality. Okay? Alam nyo ba that there are some students sa kapag groupings yan, if they do not, if they are not satisfied to the work or to the output of their members, talagang, alam nyo, yung feeling nila na parang hirap na sila sa buhay nila kasi they do not want just to work, just output. They are always wanting for quality output at may standard sila in setting that quality output. Kaya maybe you have seen this kind of students na minsan di mo alam kung maaawa ka ba or matutuwa ka. Bakit ka maaawa? Because they are always having the burden. Sila lagi yung nagdadala ng burden because akala nyo ba teachers lang ang na-challenge with the challenging students? Tandaan nyo that these self-regulated learners, when you are having collaboration, they are also being challenged by these non-self-regulated learners. Kaya siguro we have to involve them also, no, on how they can manage their classmates who are challenging. Okay? And another thing, according to Zimmerman, self-regulated learners further characterizes self-regulated students as having superior motivation. Okay? Adaptive learning methods and views their future optimistically. So, napakaganda na description ni Zimmerman, the self-regulated learner. Now, ngayon, ito yung tanong ko. I have heard that there are some of you who are teaching in the Department of Education. And of course, some of you are teaching in the private school. And I think meron dito coming from an international school, ano? So the question is, do you see the characteristics of self-regulated learner among your students? Meron bang ganon? Only few, sabi ni Ma'am Eileen. Only few of my students, okay? How about the others? Do you see characteristics of self-regulated learner among your students? Okay, some. Oo, pero at least they are existing. Kaya nakikita natin na totoo ang self-regulated learners. Okay? So thank you for those who answered. So anong gagawin natin ngayon? Very few lang sila. Okay, dali lang po nakausap ako ng anak ko. Okay? Ayan, so ano gagawin natin ngayon? Kukunti lang sila. So let us try to apply some of the strategies kung kaya nyo i-apply. Kasi we know that we are in the 21st century. So talagang most of the strategies now, they are thinking about the online distance education. Okay? So this is from the University of Connecticut, the National Research Center on the Gifted and Talented. So how to instruction for self-regulated learning strategies. Of course, if they are gifted and talented students, they already belong in this self-regulated learners. So how to? Okay, so I'm going to share with you 5 according to this website. So the first one is guide learners, self-beliefs, goal setting, and expectations. And how are we going to do that? Okay, so help students frame new information or feedback them in a positive rather than a negative manner. So this is one of the strategies that you can use, di ba? Actually, we knew this, especially parents, di ba, when we are reading books na mas maganda if you always give positive feedback to your children. So the same with our students. Okay, help students frame new information or feedback in a positive rather than a negative manner. For example, keeping track of your homework assignments will help you manage the score successfully rather than if you don't keep track, you will fail. Okay? So for example, in attending online classes, kasi nga, di ba, nasa DepEd, hindi naman ganun, hindi sila talaga katulad na sa private school na meron silang schedule for attending online classes at dapat talaga, they have to attend. Di ba? So, mas maganda if we tell them na if you will attend in the scheduled online classes, these are the things that you're going to learn. At maganda pa doon, kasi ako, one of my strategies Kasi nga magkaiba rin naman tayo eh. Pero it could also be applied na I always follow the rule na ang synchronous learning namin is only twice a month. It's in college twice a month lang yan. Kasi may options sila eh. They can choose 3, SL, AOL, and modular. Pero inalis namin modular kasi most of the students gusto na AOL. Kapag SL, weekly ang meeting. Kapag asynchronous online learning, twice a month lang. So most of the students, they choose this AOL. So twice a month. Pero ako, I always discuss every meeting. And then they are telling me na, Ma'am, why do you always meet us every week? Sabi ko, there's no rule. There is no rule or part in the guidelines that I am not allowed to discuss weekly. Ang rule lang sa guidelines natin that you may only attend twice a month. Pero ako, those who would like to attend weekly, bakit ko naman pipigilan? 'Di ba? So ibig sabihin, and then I have noticed na I have 45 students. And then kapag nagmi-meet ako weekly, I have seen 40, 35. So ibig sabihin it's more than 75% pa yung uma-attend, and I'm thinking, why are they attending but they are not required? 'Di ba? Why are they attending but they are not required? Pero pag ni-require mo sila to always attend weekly, nako, talagang isusumbong ka na yan, talagang magrereklamo na sila. Pero do not require them. Basta ikaw i-continue mo lang, and then they are seeing na there is a positive effect na kapag pala a-attend ka ng meeting weekly, okay? Pero ang attendance is only twice a month. Even the attendance is not counted na 4 times a week sila uma-attend. Alam nyo, they are really attending. And most of the students, more than half of my students, perfect attendance. Kung italagang i-count mo yung weekly meeting namin. Okay? So ngayon I'm thinking na kapag pala you are showing the students that there are positive things that could happen to your actions, they will be motivated kasi nakikita nila sa kaklase nila. Maybe their classmates are also giving feedback na mas maganda umattend kasi naririnig namin si ma'am na nagdi-discuss. Okay? So, instead of telling them na pag kayo hindi umattend, this is what will happen to you. Bahala kayo sa buhay nyo. Di ba ganon? So, mas maganda, make it positive. So, if you're going to attend, you're going to hear ma'am discussing the lesson, answering our questions immediately. Okay? So, that is one of the strategies that we could do. Okay? And provide specific use for using self-regulatory strategies. Okay? Kasi makikita mo naman dyan na minsan kapag meron ng, alam niyo yun, yung parang meron, anong tawag natin dito, na parang they don't want to do one thing, a certain thing. For example, nagkasunod-sunod yung during the first implementation of online distance learning. I have observed that most of the teachers are overwhelmed in giving the activities online. Na-overwhelmed din naman ang mga estudyante. Bakit? Kasi bigay din ng bigay ng activities yung mga teachers. Sila naman, na-overwhelmed sila na ang daming activities na kailangan pala nilang gawin. So talagang, since that we are not ready in this kind of situation, parang yung first implementation ng distance learning, I'm sure you also have this kind of nice strategy, ma'am. Thank you, Sir Ben. Okay, sabi ni Ma'am Mary Ann, basahin ko lang yung word of mouth from classmates who attended. Then, ano yung FOMO, ma'am? For those who missed the not required class. Okay, yes, yung word of mouth. Fear of missed out po. Oh, yung pala, yan po may natutunan ako, fear of missing out po. Maybe they have that kind of feeling. Di ba? Kaya ako, napakagandang strategy talaga yun. I'm not requiring them. Pero makikita mo, halos lahat umaattend. Okay? So if you have seen this, yung provide specific use for using self-regulatory strategies, pag nakita mo na parang meron na sa kanilang parang medyo defensive na sila kasi ang dami mo na binibigay na activities, ako nagbaback out ako ng konti. For example, for example, nag-AOL ako, hindi ako nag-discuss last week, pero nagbigay ako ng activity. Eh tapos, di ba ngayon, Monday, Tuesday, ginawang holiday. I do not know sa inyo, kami, ginawang holiday sa university eh. So, ang ginawa ko, di ko ma-meet yung Monday, Tuesday ko, pati yung Wednesday, Thursday ko. Sabi ko, we don't have a meeting this week, just take a rest. Naku, mga tuwan-tuwa na yun. Okay? Kasi syempre, walang activity. Kasi pag AOL, dapat magbibigay ka ng activity. Eh, since na rest naman, okay, we still have the second week, the third week, and the fourth week of November. So, makakahabol pa rin naman kami. Okay? So, kaya maganda, tingnan natin, we have to alam mo yun, yung matuto tayong makiramdam sa mga estudyante natin. Baka naman you keep on giving activities. One thing that I have learned in this implementation sa university kasi ang tawag na flexible learning modalities. Diyan sa blended learning nyo, avoid giving too much activities to your students. Diba lalo na kayo kung yung college ka nagrereklamo Ako before I am giving 4 activities a week. So talaga naman sa evaluation. Kaya nag-reflect ako, nag-back out ako ng konti. Step backward ako. And then alam nyo ba, this semester, this semester, isang activity na lang ako. And I am making sure that is the major activity in that module. Because later on, madidiscuss din natin na try to imagine how many modules, how many subjects do our students have. 'Di ba? So dapat iisipin din natin 'yon in their part. Tapos in our part din naman, ang dami natin che-checkan. Mag-check na lang ba ang gagawin natin? Yun na lang ba talaga ang gusto niyong gawin? Maybe others just compliance purposes. Yun nga, minsan ako ang dami kong activity sa modules. May modules din kami, pinagawa kami. Oo, not quality output anymore. Kasi nga, gusto na lang nila makapagpasa Mati-discuss din natin yun later. Okay? So, proceed na ako sa promote. So, thank you for those who are chatting their ideas. So, the second one, promote reflective dialogue. This is very important. Teacher modeling of reflective practices, yung think aloud. Student practice with reflective dialogue, group discussions to think through problem cases, collaborative learning. So one thing that we have to remember in this strategy is always look for a way on how students could share their ideas. Kaya napakaganda. For example, we are using Zoom. I'm really encouraging my students na something sabi, Ma'am, I can, when I'm calling them, Ma'am, I can reside because my microphone is disabled or there is a technical problem. I'm allowing them talaga kahit sunod-sunod yan. They are really chatting their answers in the chat box. Tapos namimili rin ako ng binabasa ko. Okay? And another thing, we may also look for other applications online. Rason ng mga shy. It could be, di ba? May mga ganun talaga at hindi mo naman sila maipipilit. Sabi ko nga sa inyo, wala masyadong pilitan. Kapag pipilitin mo ngayon, kikilitiin mo pa. Di ba? Ganyan ang mga strategy natin. Tandaan nyo, bawal magalit online. Kasi naka-record. Baka mamaya, nag-screen record din pala yung mga students natin. Are you aware of that? Na may mga apps sila na even that we are not sinasabi natin, part of the guidelines, that you are not allowed to record the session. Pero merong application that they can record the whole session. Okay? Kaya lagi ako nakasmile in the discussion, di ako nagagalit. Okay? Bakit ako magagalit? Ba't ako magagalit? Papangit lang ako. Hindi. Okay? Yes, include games. Mayaman si Sir Giovanni. Include games with Bryce. So, of course, we are using online educational applications, di ba? So that even we cannot call our students during the online sessions kasi nga we have to limit din yung mga online sessions natin, di ba? For example, kami 3 hours. Pero actually, I'm only meeting them 1 to 1.5 hours and that is part of our guidelines. Bawal naming sagarin yung 3 hours. So, syempre, you want to discuss more. You want to explain more. Because I'm handling College of Education, teaching profession, di ba, kailangan dun yung talagang ma-share mo yung experience mo in the classroom Kaya very limited talaga yung matatawag ko. Pero I'm allowing them to chat in the chat box, and also sometimes I'm using online educational tools na anonymous. Yung iba anonymous, pag nahihiya sila, sabi nga nila, reason ng mga shy students, kunwari, sira ang microphone. Pero what is important is, they are communicating their ideas. Hindi pwedeng because we are not meeting them, we will not look for a way on how they're going to share their ideas. Now, if you are using module, so maganda na in the part of your module, there is a reflection. Kami, in our module, laging may part ng reflection. Okay? So, since na tasking, very tasking din naman kasi yung pagsagot ng module, I'm not requiring them to answer the modules. Basta kapag nag-meet kami, they may share their ideas. Okay? And there are also other strategies pa na pwede mo pa rin i-apply. So this one is, what is important is we are encouraging our students to share their ideas. Okay? Siyempre, group discussion. So maganda ring alam ko you are into action research, 'di ba, mga taga DepEd. Okay? Alam nyo ba, I'll give you an idea na action research na if peer tutoring, peer learning during the pre-pandemic, 'di ba, nung old normal pa na tinatawag natin, we keep on doing collaboration, peer learning. Pero is peer learning still effective? Kasi peer learning, that's proven strategy in helping students acquire learning. Pero is it still effective in the online distance learning or in the distance learning? So, yun yung maganda. Tapos, you're going to use a certain app, pwede kayo mag-interview, di ba? Pwede na yung action research kasi you're going to apply that in your own students, okay? In your own online classroom, okay? So let us now proceed to number 3. Another strategy is provide corrective feedback. Performance standards must be clear and perceived as attainable. Diba sabi nyo sa DepEd, performance sa 60%, 40% ang written activities. Okay? So, dapat daw when you are giving, since that you are not always meeting with your students, unlike before, wala lang silang maintindihan, punta sila sa faculty room, nakasalubong ka sa corridor, they may ask. But not now. Napaka-importante that when you are giving performance task, it's very clear and perceived as attainable. And one thing that I'm always telling to my students, kasi every time, di ba sabi ko nga sa inyo, I'm only giving one activity. And in that activity, there is always rubric. Sabi ko sa kanila, class, ganito. If you have some questions in your mind with a given activity, read first the rubric. You have to read first what, for example, I asked them to make a concept map. If you don't have a clear idea about concept map, you're allowed to read. Diba? Information is just on the tips of your fingers. Bakit hindi mo pala alam yung concept map? Very little yung idea mo about concept map. Diba? Why not read? So what's the use of technology if you will not use it to help you? And another thing, after getting additional information about my main task, I want you to read first the rubric bago kayo gumawa. Do not immediately do the activity without looking at the criteria, without looking at the rubrics on how you're going, on how it is going to be evaluated. Kaya maganda, in your module, sana the rubrics are also part para naman alam ng mga estudyante, or when you're giving activity, students are aware how they will be evaluated. Hindi yung parang secret kung paano mo sila i-evaluate, diba? So, mas maganda sa rubric kasi nandun, when they're going to get 5, when they're going to get 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? So, phrase feedback, positive or negative, as a statement about the task of learning, not about the learner. So, that is very important. I still remember in Um, if you are familiar with the grasps, di ba? So, are you familiar with the grasp? Grasp yung sa UBD yun, understanding by design, yung goal, role. Are you familiar with that? Sino nakaabot ng UBD understanding by design na ginamit noong year 2012 ba yun? 2013? Ayan, sabi ni Ma'am, agree, present the rubric first. Yes, then present the task. Para hindi secret kung paano natin sila. Sabi rin ni Ma'am Apple, rubric stated po sa module if the test is subjective type. Yes, that's true. Kapag subjective type, talagang kailangan ng rubric. So, naalala niyo ba? Ba't wala sumasagot sa akin sa chat box? Goal, role, audience, grasp, situation, performance, standard. May nakakaalala pa nun? Mabata pa yata ng mga teachers natin, ano? Mabata pa yung mga teachers natin, parang ako lang nakakaalala. Pero ako I really, yes po, grasp. May S pa sir, kasi ano, standard, yung rubric. Kaya that's always part of the performance. Okay? And then another thing, so about the task learning, not about the learner. And one thing on in giving feedback to the work of our students, kailangan when you are using rubric, make part of the make this part of the rubric na you are assessing the process and not the output. 'Di ba? So for example, nung nakikita pa natin sila, it's all about workmanship. Di ba? Pag sinabi nating workmanship, yung attitude, yung values nila, gaano ba sila ka-attentive in doing that activity? Di ba? We are also observing them. That's why that is part of the rubric. Okay? Pero if we will only focus on the output, ay maganda to, pinauwi mo. Di ba? So you do not know kung sino na yung gumawa nun. Eh ngayon, how are we going to know na the students are really working with their activity? Wala tayong magagawa ngayon, pero we have to use technology pa rin. Ano ba naman na magpa-video ka ng 1 minute? Diba? Kasi that's the only way. We do not see students if they are really working their activities. Pwede rin yung step by step, papipicturean mo, yun ang ipapasend mo sa'yo. Okay? Ako, kausap ko yung mga principals when I'm teaching in the graduate school, sa PhD class nila. So, mga estudyante ko, principals. Sabi ko, kayo ba, naniniwala talaga kayo that the students do not have the gadget, do not have the internet connection, even number of minutes? Sabi, ma'am, hindi po kami naniniwala. Kasi yung iba nga po, that there are some parents naman na gumagawa ng paraan at binibilan nila ng gadgets, yung mga anak nila, and they are buying loads. Okay? So sabi nga namin, in this pandemic, sabi ng university president namin, in this pandemic, we all have to do our parts. For example, the university conducted capacity building. Kayo sa DepEd, nag-capacity building kayo. Nagbigay kayo ng orientation sa students. Nagbigay kayo ng orientation with the parents, gumawa kayo ng module. Yun yung mga parts natin. Hindi ba it's already part of the parents naman, nagawa naman nila ng paraan kung paano sila makakatulong sa pag-aaral ng kanilang mga anak. So one thing that we have to give also to our parents and to our students are trust. That they can do their part, they can do their responsibility. Okay? So kaya kailangan na for you to check the process, kailangan may proof. Hindi naman na siya kaya gumawa nito. Di ba that's your problem? Siya kaya yung nagsagot ng module. Okay? Kaya dapat ang module, hindi lang siya laging objective type. Ang assessment. Kailangan, meron ding part doon na maa-assess mo if they are really learning. And that is, hanggang ang kaya natin gawin is for them to let experience. Diba? Nakita ko, kung nakakapag-TikTok nga sila ng ilang minuto lang, diba? I think 1 minute. Bakit hindi nila ma-TikTok kung ano yung ginagawa nilang very short procedure na yun? So that's why technology is a very helpful in this kind of situation. Okay, so that's number 3. And number 4, help learners make connections between abstract concepts. Okay, first, use case-based instructions. For examples, or examples that students come up with themselves. Di ba kaya nga kayo pinagawa ng self-learning modules? Sabi ko nga, tanong ko before, why do you have to, tanong ko sa mga DepEd teachers na estudyante ko, why do you have to write another module? Di ba modules of DepEd are existing? Sabi nga nila, ma'am, kaya po kami pinagawa, ayan, sabi nga ni Ma'am Jekris, contextualize. Makiuso sa trend ng mga bata. Yeah, oo, tama yan, ma'am. Tapos tama rin naman yun, ma'am. Ma'am, kasi sabi nga ng mga estudyante ko, ma'am, kasi po, kaya ka pinagawa ng self-learning modules kasi kailangan yung mga activities namin should be contextualized, should be what is available in their own places. Ay, oo nga, tama naman. Kaya talagang dapat gumawa kayo ng modules. Okay? So, na-realize ko rin yun na may existing modules na. So, you really have to work on to the task. Diba? So, yung performance task na dapat, yung mga activities, even the discussion before we have the tools in the schools. Pero ngayon, kailangan hanapin nyo rin. Maybe when you are writing the modules, iniisip nyo rin, ano bang meron sa bahay na pwede kong gawing examples. Diba? So, ganun dapat. Even when you are discussing, you don't have to get out from that situation. Nandun sila, wala naman sila ibang makikita. Okay, so dapat case-based instructions, use hands-on learning activities, and then dapat yung mga activities pwedeng gawin just around their places. Okay, and help students learn to separate relevant from irrelevant information. Help them know where and how to focus their attention, guide their reference standards. This is what I'm telling. Nakita nyo ako, every time, I'm always applying this. Nakikita nyo yung presentation ko, laging may naka-highlight. Kasi gusto ko matandaan ng mga participants, even in my own students. Kahit nagpe-present ako ng guidelines sa Execom, I always use highlighter in the Google Slides. Kasi what I want is my students focus only to the important words in my discussion. So dapat ganun, for example, nakita nyo ano bang ibig sabihin ni ma'am dyan, di ba? Parang that's the question ang hirap kayang magbasa. Tapos your students are using cellphones, tapos ang liliit pa ng text nyo, tandaan nyo dapat when you are creating PowerPoint presentation or Google Slides presentation or Canva man yung ginagamit nyo, dapat 24 point. 24 ang pinaka maliit na font size. Emphasize the important points. Yes, prioritization. Okay? So that's according to Ma'am Mary Ann. Kaya matuto rin kayong gumamit ng bold, italic, mag-highlight kayo. You may use different colors. Ako gusto ko ng different colors kasi gusto ko makulay. Okay? Pero actually, we are already helping our students. Yung mga estudyante ka ng senior high school, gumawa sila ng research na about the effect of color-coded words to the memory retentions of the students. So ginawa nila yun to the first year students. So ang nangyayari, nagpa-flash sila ng mga words. Una, puro black lahat. Tapos pinapasulat kung ilan ang natatandaan. And then second flash, may mga nabago ng kulay. May naging red. Tapos ngayon, tinignan niya, pinasulat, ano yung mga natatandaan mo? Then lumabas ngayon din sa result ng research nila na mas natatandaan ng mga students yung nakaiba ang color na words. Okay? So sa dami ng information that we are giving to our students, try to imagine how many subjects. 8 to 9 subjects. Diba? Or 7 to 8 subjects in a week. My gosh. Diba? So, ibig sabihin, ang daming information. So, ibig sabihin, tayo rin as teachers, we have to help our students on how they're going to organize the information that we are giving to them. Parang makukuha lang talaga nila yung mga importante. Okay, so highlighting is one, changing of the color is one. Another thing is using the concept map. Di ba, in our part of, dapat part of our module, there is always the generalization eh. Di ba meron silang tinatawag na in a nutshell, yung mga ganun. Actually, dapat gumagamit tayo ng mga concept map para nakikita nila na ito lang pala yung mga words na very important that they have to understand. So that's number 4. Okay, help learners make connections between abstracts and concepts, make real life situation, activities, examples, let them experience the learning, and learn to separate relevant from irrelevant information. At dito pa lang, kailangan mo na rin ng mga strategies. Okay? And number 5, help learners link new experiences to prior learning. Use experiential learning activities. Siyempre, that's part of our module, di ba? Sa performance task nila, kailangan they have to do something. Okay? Bakit experiential learning activities? And one thing that you have to consider is to share what they know. Kasi the highest form of learning is when you are teaching other people. So, ibig isipin nyo, ma'am, they are already there in their own places. So, how they can share their learning? Kaya nga part of the orientations with the parents, sabihin nyo na when their children are talking about what they have learned, let them tell stories about what they have learned. Hindi na sabihin mo, huwag mo nga akong kwentuhan, wala naman akong kaalam-alam dyan eh. Di ba sabihin ng ibang parents na gano'n? True, wala tayong alam. Baka mamaya there are some parents na hindi naman talaga nakapag-aral na, kailangan na mag-work, they are busy. Pero part of the orientations, sabihin nyo na let their children talk about what they have learned. Pwede rin silang magtanong, ano ba pinag-aralan? Yung bang hindi masyadong seryoso, do you get what I mean? Kasi nga before, if we want this na the highest form of learning is when you are teaching others, tapos ginagawa natin to sa classroom through collaborative activities, peer learning, peer tutoring, kasi nag-tutor nila ngayon. Tapos yung estudyante pang nasa bahay, sila pa yung mga peer learners na kailangan palang i-tutor. Okay? That's why one of the strategies that you can do together with the parents, let their children talk about their learning. Okay? I hope you get that one kasi that's a very effective. Kaya ako rin nare-refresh din ako kasi ganun din anak ko eh. Ma, ganyan. Siya break time ako nandito. Sabihin niya, ma, ganyan. Sabi ko, ate, pagkwentahan natin later kasi nagkaklase rin ako eh. Ganon. Okay, pero that is very important. Napaka effective nun. Okay, so our dear teachers, when you meet your parents, when you meet the parents of your children, of your students, isama nyo yun sa orientation. Okay? And later on, magbibigay din ako ng other things that you can, other strategies that you can share to the parents para naman makatulong din sila sa inyo. Okay? So, which of the following you always do to help student become self-regulated learners? So, these are the 5 that I discussed. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alin dito? First, guide learners' self-beliefs, goal setting, and expectations. Yung positive feedback. Number 2, promote reflective dialogue. You always do strategies on how they can share their ideas. Number 3, provide corrective feedback. Diba? And then 4, help learners make connections between abstract concepts. And number 5, help learners link new experiences to prior learning. So, alin dito yung lagi? Wow! 1 to 5. Si Ma'am Jack Chris. And then si Ma'am Rachel, 4 and 5. Oo. Okay? So, 4, help learners make connections between abstract. Contextualization yun. Help learners link new experiences. 3 to 5. Okay. So, what else? So, yun yung mga sagot nila. Okay, 3 to 4, 3 to 5. So, thank you for your participation. And I know na there are some of you na ginagawa na to. There are some of you na maybe you have learned something na dapat pala ginagawa nyo. Okay, so let us continue giving our best to our students. So, this time naman, yung last part of my discussion is all about the result of the study of Carter, Rice, Jackson, in 2020, self-regulated learning in online learning environments, strategies for remote learning. Okay? So the author suggests using strategies that have emerged from previous research. So lahat ng didiscuss ko ditong strategies, they are part of, they are based on the result of different researches. Okay, so I'm going to discuss only 5. So let us have the first one, yung motivation and learning control. So what do you mean when we say motivation and learning control? So I want you to answer this one. So si Ma'am Heidi daw 2 to 4. Okay? So what do you think are the concerns of your students at home during distance learning? What do you think are the concerns? Kindly type your answer here. What do you think are the concerns of your students at home during distance learning? Yes, yung iba, no gadgets, nanghihiram lang. Yung signal, yung intermittent signal, internet connection, stressful, mas stressful talaga sa bahay, ano? Alam nyo, we are thinking that our students are safe at home kaysa lumabas dahil sa pandemic, but you do not know what's happening. Baka mamaya mas safe pa sila kapag lalabas sila ng bahay. I hope you know what I mean. There are some home which is not safe. Diba? Kasi doon nagkakaroon ng different abuses. Physical, mental, sexual, even sexual abuses. So, and this is part of the reality. Ayan, ang daming sagot, ang daming concerns. Load, activities, no one can assist them. Loaded daw ng activities. Ayan, okay. Environment factors, distractions because they don't have a room for learning, toxic environment. Yes, alam nyo ba, this one, yung motivation and learning control has something to do with the environment. Okay, thank you for those who answered. So here in motivation and learning control, goal orientations to learning were initially considered situated orientations for action in an achievement task. So ibig sabihin, we're thinking, how are we going to help our students to become regulated learners kung yung sitwasyon naman nila, their situation, their environment has something to do with their performance. Diba? So, that's according to Ms. Dweck and Nichols. Okay? And another thing. So, instead of focusing on the content outcomes, goal orientations consider how, why, and under what environmental conditions people learn. So, dapat daw isipin din natin na kung magbibigay tayo ng maraming activities, can they do that? Lahat ba ng estudyante natin, katulad ng nasa private school, na para bang kapag nag-aaral sila, bawal silang storbohin? Hindi lahat ng estudyante ganun. May iba na nag-aaral pero inuutusan at walang pakialam magulang nila kung nag-aaral sila. Diba? So, ibig sabihin, these are the things that we have to consider when we are also giving activities. Kaya nga kanina dun, loaded activities. I hope, ma'am, you are referring about, ayan, bombarded with mental stress, with activities muna tayo. Ayan, loaded activities, sabi ni Ma'am Annalisa. Totoo yun. Okay? Kasi you're giving too many activities. Pero yung sitwasyon ba sa bahay, nag-aalaw sa kanila to do those kinds of activities? Hindi natin pwedeng sabihin, wala tayong pakialam kasi dapat gumawa tayo ng module. Pero dapat yung module din naman natin, while we are writing, giving activities, we are also thinking about our students. Kaya ngayon, in time of pandemic, this is also part of my discussion together with the Malolos DepEd supervisors na we don't have to expect too much from our students in the time of pandemic. Una-una, schools are not ready, teachers are not ready, students are not ready, parents are not ready. So, why are you blaming? Dapat walang sisihan. Okay, dapat dito tulungan tayo on how are we going to cope up. Kaya nga sabi ko sa inyo, try to apply strategies, orient the parents. Hanggang ganun pa lang yung kaya nating magagawa. And do not expect too much from your students. The one thing that you can do, because you are not expecting too much from your students, prepare for the post-pandemic. Alam ko naman, nararamdaman nyo na rin yun na malapit na rin tayong bumalik. There are some schools this November, di ba? That they will start face to face. Dapat yun ang paghandaan nyo. How will you teach the students now? 'Di ba? Saan ka mag-uumpisa? Yun ang mga dapat yung ngayon ang dapat nyo rin pinaghahandaan ngayon. Paano ka mag-uumpisa? Saan ka mag-uumpisa? Alam mo naman na very low yung performance nila during the pandemic. Okay, so these are the things that we have to think also. Okay, and another thing, in motivation and learning control, learners were regarded as capable of taking some responsibility for their engagement and subsequent achievement when the environment support it. So it has really to do with the environment. And self-regulated learning is a self-determined learner effort towards academic performance. So most models of SRL have major components daw. Yung forethought, performance, and self-reflection. So what do I mean by this? Kapag in self-regulation daw, learners set goals, anticipate obstacles, and make plans. Forethought phase yan ng self-regulation. Okay? So when we say forethought, di ba? Ito yung advance. Parang pwede na sa advance mag-isip. There are some students na advance mag-isip na nakakatulong din naman, di ba? Dapat we let the students to set goals, anticipate obstacles, and make plans, okay? And during naman, performance phase, during learning, students use diverse strategies to help themselves learn and stay on task, okay? And in the self-reflection phase naman, when an activity is complete, learners reflect on their performance and evaluate the learning process and outcome. So what I'm just trying to say here is dapat when you are thinking on strategies on how you're going to develop your students to become self-regulated learners, dapat ito yung 3 phases that you have to focus. Dapat yung pagiging advanced thinker, isa yun sa i-develop mo. Okay? Tapos yung sila mismo, they are thinking their own strategies kung paano nila gagawing maganda yung output nila. And the last one is, dapat after doing their output, matuto silang mag-reflect if they have learned, if okay ba yung output nila, natuto ba sila. So yun yung sinasabi sa literature na 3 phases of sub-processes in self-regulation. Kaya kapag mag-iisip ka ng strategy, nasaang part ka ba ng process ng self-regulation? Is it forethought phase, performance phase, or self-reflection phase? Okay? And another thing, in online learning, in K-12 level, has advocates who strongly support its use because of the potential for learner control. Thus, the expectation of flexibility demands that some attention to be paid in fully online learning. Okay, so that's why, because the discussion is all about the strategies on how are we going to develop self-regulated learners in online learning. So kailangan daw we have to support. Di lang naman in online learning, even if it is modular, kailangan we have to prepare our parents, we have to prepare them in their own places. So talaga naman lagi natin kapartner ang parents natin. Okay, so the second one is cognition and structured learning. So ngayon may question po ako sa inyo. Yan. What is your concern to the condition of the children or students during pandemic? Ano naman yung concern nyo sa mga estudyante natin, sa kondisyon ng mga estudyante natin, now that we are not seeing them? Diba? Ilang taon na natin silang din nakikita? Almost 2 years na. Di naman natin natapos yung nakaraan, diba? So nag-umpisa tayo, nakatapos ulit tayo ng isang school year. na we are not saying our students. So ano yung concern mo? Ano yung iniisip mo sa kanila ngayon that you are not seeing them? They are not going to school? What are your concerns with your students? They're learning? Are they learning? Oo. What else? Sabi ni Ma'am Ellen, they're learning. Natututo ba sila? Sabi ko nga sa inyo, do not expect too much during the pandemic. Their mental health, yes. Okay? So because my discussion is all about cognition and structured learning, and it has something to do with the mental health of our students. Okay? So research in cognitive load theory or CLT challenges theories of self-directed learning, including SRL. And what do we mean when we say cognitive load theory? This is a very simple diagram about the cognitive load. Ang tawag dito sa cognitive load, yung the good, the bad, and the can be ugly. The three parts of the cognitive load. Okay? So what do we mean by these three parts? For example, this one, yung intrinsic cognitive load, complexity of new information. These are the things that we are discussing to our students. These are the things that we are giving. These are the information in the module. Tapos pag nagdi-discuss pa tayo online, ito yun. Ito yung part nung cognitive load na yun because they're trying to acquire this information. Okay? And then the second one, the germane cognitive load, deep processing of new information by integrating it with previous learning. So dapat daw, this one, we really have to focus. Kasi we know that's why we are teaching that lesson or topic because we're thinking that is important. Di ba? Kaya dapat ma-maximize natin yung part ng cognitive load na to. At ito namang intrinsic cognitive load so that they will be able to maximize the germane cognitive load. We have to simplify the way that we discuss. Di ba that is one of the roles of the teachers. Sabi ko nga, sinasabi ko sa mga estudyante ko, not all those who have knowledge and skills can teach. Sabi din, may kumukontra ako estudyante. Ma'am, basta daw po may knowledge and skills you can teach. No, the question here is if you can teach effectively. Kaya nga kayo kako nandito sa College of Education eh. Sige, tell me, lahat ba ako ng professors nyo coming from other colleges? Kasi may mga ganun, di ba? Invited professors, lalo na in their major. Kapag major ay mathematics, galing yan sa College of Science and Math. Can you say that they are all effective? So, dun sila nagsabi na, yes ma'am. So, that's what yes ma'am, they are not all effective, sabi nila. So, that's what I'm telling you. Because not all people who have knowledge and skills can teach effectively. That's why you are here in the College of Education because you are learning how to teach because teaching is also a skill itself that we need to learn. Diba? That's why it's what we call the pedagogy. Kailangan we know the pedagogy of teaching, the art of teaching dahil hindi lahat ng merong alam at may kakayanan ay kayang i-share yung ideas nila. That's why, make it sure, my dear teachers, that when you are teaching a certain concept, mas maganda, mas madali mo na ipaparating dun sa mga estudyante mo. Try to simplify. So maybe there are some of you who are already handling that subject, teaching that subject for several years. Kabisado nyo na yan. So make it sure that when you are working with a module, para lang talaga kayo nakikipag-usap. That's why module nga, di ba? The idea of creating module is it's communicative, na parang nakikipag-usap ka lang, parang ikaw talaga yung nagsasalita sa module. Dapat ganun yung approach ng module. Yes, tama si Ma'am Mary Ann, conversational. Okay? So that's how you're going to write your module. And so that's why you have to simplify it. Okay? And then yung extraneous cognitive load distracts working memory from processing new information. Ito yung dapat ma-reduce. Okay? Yung extraneous cognitive load. Tayo, feeling ko hindi ko alam kung sanay kayo sanay kayo ng multitasking. Pero ako for example, pinapattern ka sa meeting na to. tapos papatarin ka rin sa meeting na to. Parang there's no excuse anymore na pwede kang umattend hanggang 3 meeting, hanggang 4 na meeting as long as you have the gadgets. Na-experience nyo na ba yun? O kaya mo yan? Ma-attend po ako isang meeting, pinapa-attend na po ako. Kaya mo yun, mag-multitask ka na lang. Pero actually, we can only focus to one of those meetings virtually. Am I right? Sa isa ka lang makakapag-focus. Though we are saying that we are attending, we are just there. Pero we don't learn anything. Okay? Kaya nga talagang the same with our students. Diba? So kaya keep on reminding them na part ng guidelines na please avoid holding your gadgets or cell phones off the notification so that you are not being distracted. Di ba? Ganun dapat yung mga sinasabi natin sa estudyante natin. Kasi we have to understand that that is part of the cognitive load. Yung extraneous cognitive load, we have to reduce that. Kasi ito yung parang pumipigil sa atin to learn. Kasi nga, we are distracted with other things. Napakaraming information na pumapasok. That's why the students do not have focus anymore. So that is what you have to understand about the cognitive load. Simplify the information you are giving so that they can acquire, they can process, and that is the part that we have to maximize. And help also our students on how they're going to reduce this extraneous cognitive load by avoiding distractions. Unang-una, off the notifications of their cell phones and focus to the discussion. Okay? And then, so another thing about CLT, specifically, the cognitive load theory, research suggests that choices can be confusing, distracting, and or mentally taxing on learners' cognitive processing. Okay? So yun yung mga result ng researches in CLT. Suggest that choices daw can be confusing, distracting, and mentally taxing. Kaya nga, di ba, isimplify daw natin yung mga information that we are giving to our students, lalo na ngayon na they are only have the module, that's very limited yung meeting natin with them online. Okay? And after all, learners who engage in self-regulation must not only focus on task completion to learn content. It's not only focusing on tasks. They must also self-assess their understanding and determine how to make changes. So naalala niyo yung 3 sub-processes ng self-regulation? Di ba yung last part nun is they have to make some reflection about their learning, about their output. Okay? And another thing about cognition and structured learning, this type of complex understanding might be specifically difficult for young learners and learners who have not had appropriate co-regulation experiences. What do you mean by co-regulation experiences? Ito yung natutulungan natin, yung mga estudyante natin, parents are also helping their children. Hindi naman kasi lahat ng parents ay knowledgeable na dapat pala kapag nag-aaral yung anak ko, na nakakausap ko, natutulungan ko, at least kung hindi ko man masyado natutulungan dahil mahirap yun, at least nakakausap. Okay? So, learners are becoming difficult in this part because their environment, the people around them are not like teachers na tutulungan sila on how to solve their problems, di ba? Sabi nyo nga, few of the students are self-regulated learners. Ganun din naman sa parents natin. Few of them are aware na dapat ito pala yung tamang process when we are, when our children are studying. Okay? Dapat yung co-regulation experiences, yung pakikipagtulungan ng bawat isa to help the children in their situation, in their problem. Okay? And another thing in cognition structured learning, learners are exposed to complex content differences in background knowledge and prior experiences, which is fact na fact. Diba? May narinig ako kanina sa module, may fact block or fact ba yun? Okay. So naman yun eh. So tandaan, I'm always telling to my students, when knowledge become knowledge, knowledge is not just merely acquiring information from the teachers, from the book that they have read, or from the different resources. Tandaan ako that knowledge becomes knowledge by having two combinations. The first one, sabi ni Dr. Arturo, activity should be simplified, but it promote critical thinking. Yes, at doon tayo dapat, yun talaga yung dapat nating i-enhance. Okay? So going back to knowledge, yung knowledge is always a combination. Yung information that we are acquiring from our teachers, from other people, from the books, other references, hindi pa yan knowledge. It's only information. It will only become knowledge when the student apply that in their own context, in their own experiences. Maybe you are thinking na, bakit this is what I'm trying to say? Pero sa dami ng estudyante mo, ilan-ilan lang yung same idea with you. Because when your students are listening to your discussion, they're already playing this information in their minds. At yung information na yun, ina-apply nila in their own context. And that's the time that they are generating knowledge. So ibig sabihin, hindi yung same na gusto mong sabihin sa kanila, that's the same that they are also getting. Kasi nami-mix yun ng mga experiences nila. Okay? And that is also one thing that we have to understand among our students, okay? Lend themselves to a differential abilities to participate in online courses without carefully structured materials and activities. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, yung module, talagang ayusin, na yung naiintindihan, simplified, and the activities are contextualized para naman when the students are trying to understand that, madali nilang mako-comprehend because they can easily generate knowledge based from what they have learned. Okay? So that's cognition and structured learning. And another thing, maybe you are aware, and I know that you are aware about scaffolding. Okay? So increased cognitive load due to the metacognitive demands of SRL might be moderated through scaffolding within a course. So this could come as guided instruction. Diba? Di ba ganun naman ang module natin? Sabi nga, dapat talagang simplified, and it seems na tayo talaga yung nagsasalita, we are explaining it. Or worked examples where learners are virtually guided through examples of problems in content areas. We keep on talking about the modules. Baka nakakalimutan natin, it's blended. So yung mga videos na kayo mismo yung nagre-record, nakakatuwa rin yung may mga podcast, ano? Talagang they are discussing, you only using their voice. Kasi maganda, kasi pwede naman nagre-record kayo, nagve-video kayo, you have examples. Pero we are aware also na kapag may video, napakalakas kumain sa data. Kaya yung iba naman, they are using audio only, di ba, sa podcast na nakikinig lang yung bata, ganyan. Then nagsasagot siya ng module. So that is also another strategy. Okay? Ayan, okay. So, next, another in cognition structured learning, addressing the complex relationship between the affective need for control and the cognitive need for structure. What do you mean by affective need for control? Di ba pag sinabi nating affective, it has something to do with the emotions of our students, okay? So this to the affective need control, cognitive need for structure seems vital to strong course design that leads to learner success in fully online learning under typical circumstances, but especially during the trauma of the global pandemic. So ito daw yung when we are trying to work on a certain activity for our students, iisipin din natin yung affective side nila. Okay? It's not always na we are giving this activity because we believe that it will promote critical thinking. Diba? That it will promote, it will make them self-regulated learners, that they will practice the different skills, the 21st century learning skills. Pero tandaan din natin na dapat binabalance din naman natin na we have to remember yung emotional status ng mga students natin. Okay? Kaya nga kanina, di ba, one of the conditions, yung mental health nila, because that's really existing. Maraming mga estudyante na the first part of the pandemic, hindi nila pa kaya. Pero buti ngayon, nakaka-cope up na sila, nakaka-survive na sila. So this is because during such substantial social and economic disruption, commitments to schooling could shift dramatically. Kapag hindi daw natin kayang i-balance yung effective learning control and also affective need for control and cognitive need for structure. Okay? So, and the third one, I think it's already the third one, reconciling learner control and structure in K-12 fully online learning. So what do you think students withdraw from their education during the pandemic? Yes, feelings, value of empathy. Okay? So kindly answer this one. Why do you think students withdraw? Meron ba kayong mga estudyante na nag-stop nung pandemic? Nung last year talagang hindi sila nag-aral. Meron kayong mga ganong estudyante sa DepEd? Meron. So parang kahit parents sila, ayaw na silang pag-aralin, di ba? Gusto nila hindi na raw po kaya. Parang nakakalungkot yun. Pag working na po sila, yes ma'am. Ayun, oo. Financial problem. So, isang dapat nating paghandaan, 'di ba? Ayaw ng modular. Oo, kasi yung ibang parents, kapag talaga module, kailangan ng lalo na ngayon lalo na sa elementary, no? Hirap ng walang parents. So, alam niyo, isa rin siguro sa one thing na quite positive na makita ng mga parents yung importance nating teachers. Dati kasi iniiwan lang nila yung mga anak nila sa atin, di ba? Tapos uwian, no? Di ba? Mas gusto pa nila pumapasok mga anak nila kaysa nasa bahay. So nakikita nila ngayon yung importance of us teachers. Sabi ni Ma'am Rose, it's hard for them to learn. Totoo po. On their own because their parents, yes. Ako, I know that. Kasi yung kapatid ko, hindi naman din nakapagtapos. Nakita ko, nag-observe lang ako kasi hindi ko siya masisi. Hindi ko masisi anak niya, pero yung anak niya masipag mag-aral. Yun nga lang, ML din ng MA. Ko, regulate mo ka ako yung pag-ML ka ako ng anak mo. Siyempre, anak niya, hindi ko naman masyado. Pero kung kaya ko i-tutor, gina-tutor ko sa naging teacher ako. Okay? Nabuntis. Sir Doc Arturo, ikaw direct message ka sa akin. Nabuntis. Totoo po yan. May estudyante rin ako. Siyempre, di natin alam yun. Malalaman na lang natin kasi humihingi na ng extension dahil daw nanganak. Nabuntis na nanganak na, Doc Arturo. Okay, no, yung natapos niya yung pandemic na yon. I mean, yung first year of pandemic, natapos niya yun, nabuntis, nagkaanak. Mahalaga naman, hindi siya nag-give up, okay? Wala na tayong magagawa, supportahan na lang natin yung mga estudyante, okay? So in reconciling learner control and structure in K-12 fully online learning in traditional school settings, financial situation, settings, scaffolding for SRL might come in the form of, first, nung traditional pa tayo, face-to-face pa tayo, teacher assistance in creating an effective learning environment, di ba? Lagi tayong nandyan para sa mga estudyante natin. Namimiss na natin sila. Availability of tools to organize content. Kasi nga, tools are just inside the classroom. Nasa laboratory lang. Self-evaluation through student reflection. And this is part of our discussion na bago tayo mag-end. We help them to evaluate themselves, di ba? And the development monitor skills, instruction, feedback, and encourage. So, in K-12 fully online, SRL support diminishes due to the absence of physical teacher presence. Kaya siguro yung bata na to, mas yung mga Yes. Sabi po sa akin, internet connection is unstable. Hello po, naririnig pa po ako? Hello?
Yes po, Doc. Pero on my end po,
Naririnig pa po
medyo,
ako?
yes po,
Ayun,
Doc.
okay.
Medyo on my end
Oo,
lang, Doc.
kanina
Medyo, baka
naglalag.
akin lang din. Kala ko akin
Oo,
lang din.
choppy daw kanina.
Okay po.
Ngayon po, okay na po. Yan, okay na daw. Choppy po kanina. Oo nga, sabi, your internet connection is stable. Okay, minsan may mga ganyan po talaga tayo. Pero okay na po na. Thank you, Ma'am Marian. Thank you, Sir Roderick. Okay. Ayan. So, totoo naman, di ba? Yung support, SRL support, paano pa? Paano pa natin magagawa yan? We are not seeing our students anymore. Also, teachers have far less control over curriculum materials because what they have only are their modules, okay? So that's why instead supporting SRL must emerge as learning platform features included in course design. And how are we going to do that? It is said here, an example of this is the provision of tools to organize content and activities. Okay, and other support might come from on-site mentors, which are adults who assist learners in person. So tama naman na you are providing modules to your students, tapos contextualize yung modules nyo, materials can be seen at home. Di ba? Pwede niya magre-reflect, titingin na lang sa labas, titingin na lang sa langit, sa mga ulap. Okay, or sa garden nila kung may garden. Okay, and other might come from on-site mentors, which are adults who assist learners in person. Siyempre, these are the people at home. Kaya kailangan, when we are planning in our school, always involve our parents and guardians. Okay? So, reconciling learner control and structure in K-12 fully online learning, sinasabi dito that most recently, virtual mentoring using artificial intelligence is being tested and offered to students. So, ibig sabihin, maybe in other developed countries, they are already using AI, artificial learning. So, this AI coaching tool should promise for helping learners and on-site mentors use content learning of SRL strategies. Diba, there are some, syempre hindi naman lahat ng estudyante natin naka-iPhone, ano? Pero meron niya naka-iPhone. Sino yung kinakausap natin sa iPhone? Na-try nyo na ba nakausapin ng iPhone nyo? Kasi parang naiinis na rin kayo. Wala na kayo makakausap. Sino kinakausap natin sa iPhone? That's a very simple AI. Parang wala naman naka-iPhone dito. Baka sabihin niyo, sana ma'am, sana all ma'am may iPhone. Okay, kilala niyo ba si Siri? Mag-type naman kayo na, ayun, si Siri, ayan. Oo, si Siri, si Google, tama, si Siri. But sabi ni Ma'am Leanna, but some parents and guardians don't want to be involved in the distance learning of their children. How to help this kind of stakeholders po. Okay, sabi nga, di ba sabi ko nga sa inyo kanina na part ng orientation dapat, we assign tasks. And let them realize that na ang school, ito ginagawa, mga teachers, ito ginagawa, ang mga estudyante, ito dapat gawin nyo. Mga parents, sana may participation din kayo. Okay? Sa ating buhay, there are things na hindi natin kayang solusyonan because the solution is beyond our control. So you cannot do that. Kaya nga sinasabi ko sa inyo na paghandaan nyo yung post-pandemic because that will happen. Hindi naman, although dun sa unang, for example, yung Spanish flu, 'di ba? Yung Spanish flu, that was also a pandemic. Nagtagal siya ng 3 to 4 years. So ibig sabihin, hindi naman naglalast. Yun nga lang talaga, marami tayong ika-catch up. So yun ang paghahandaan natin, yung pagbalik ng mga bata because we know that they were not guided properly. Kasi sabi nga ni Ma'am Liana, parents really do not want to be involved. We cannot solve that. because it's beyond our control. So anong kaya natin gawin? Paghandaan natin ang pagbabalik ng ating mga estudyante dahil babalik at babalik yan. Magulang pa mismo magtutulak, bumalik dyan. Okay? So yun po ang paghandaan po natin. Okay? So yan, no idea ma'am, no iPhone here, sabi ni Sir Ruben. Si Siri po yun. And maybe, sa ko nanonood kayo ng TikTok, narinig ko dun si Alexa. Alexa is a product of Amazon. It's like a speaker. So it's a simple AI. Yung if you have heard Internet of Things, na once connected siya sa internet, it can also make other things work, like turn on the lights, lock the door, open the curtain, yung mga ganun. Kasi lahat ng gamit sa bahay, internet connected din, okay? So the same with Siri, kapag pinindot mo, for example, hey Siri, what is Internet of Things? So, sasagutin ka niya, sabihin niya, these are the things that I have found out. Di browse ka na lang. So, that's a very, tapos si Bixby kapag Samsung. Okay? So, ganun. So, dapat, dapat ma-discover din natin yung mga ganito. Baka gumagamit ng cellphone yung mga estudyante natin. Kilala pa nila si Siri at saka si Bixby at saka si Alexa. Sabi ni Ma'am Marian, what are those actions for post-pandemic? What specific activities? Alam niyo ba, in the university, sumasagot ako ng mga tanong in our university, December pa lang po, we already have guidelines in limited face-to-face learning. Okay? So, what are we going to do in the post-pandemic? Siyempre, ang gagawin mo dyan muna ay i-assess mo muna yung mga estudyante. Lagi naman ganun eh. In every actions that we're going to do in our school, there should always be assessment. Kasi yun yung panggagalingan mo ng action plan mo eh. Di ba? Assess mo. So, alin dito yung mahina sila from the year of pandemic na nag-aral sila at itong taon na to, alin dito yung mga competencies. So, yun ang tututukan nyo ngayon. Kasabay pa nun na dapat, nag-move on din sila sa next grade level nila. Kaya dapat, isa sa mga gawin ng mga school principals ay yung scheduling. Dapat part ng scheduling ay, remediation. Tapos, may part ng remediation, tapos saka pa lang yung next topic. Dapat may ganun kayong scheduling. Okay? So, and of course, yung physical structure ng school. Kaya nga limited face-to-face. Kalahati lang dapat ang pumasok dyan. Okay? May schedule lang ng pagpasok. So, matrabaho, pero lahat will start in assessment. I-survey nyo muna. Ano ang hindi nila natutunan? Ano yung natutunan nila? Focus, the most important competency. So aside from assessment, subjectively, from you po, from your experiences po. Aside from assessment, subjectively, kasi kami, hindi pa kami nagpo-post hindi pa kami bumabalik sa school. Hindi pa. Wala pang state university na bumalik sa school. Okay, kasi alam niyo kung bakit. Napakahigpit ng DepEd. Napakahigpit ng CHED. Feeling mo, gagastos ka ng malaki para i-restructure yung mga classroom. Kaya hindi ko alam kung paano, may guidelines kami, pero hindi ko alam kung paano pag ginagawa nila. Pero ako, if Ma'am Marian, you're asking me, I will start from assessment. Kasi if I do not know the assessment, if I do not know the current situation of my students, of the parents, I cannot make the plan. Unang-una dyan, scheduling. Kunwari, nalaman ko na na ito pala yung mga least mastered competencies during the pandemic. Gagawa ko ng schedule na dapat in 1 hour of that subject, part is the remediation, the other part, the other half is of course, di mo naman pwedeng puro ka-review lang. Kailangan nila mag-move sa next level. So, ganun po ang gagawin ko. I will focus on the scheduling para ma-accommodate ko ang remediation at new topic. Okay? Dahil di naman natin sila i-stay sa grade 5 kung saan sila nahinto. Di ba? Check na grade 6 yan next year. And alam niyo naman ang practice sa DepEd. Kailangan pumunta yan sa next level. At nasa teachers, nasa inyo po yung burden nun. Okay? Thank you, Ma'am Mary Ann, for that question. For now, because we are not yet there, ako naisip ko, Assessment, survey muna, and then scheduling. Paano ko magkakaroon ng remediation papunta doon sa new lesson. Lahat po ng subjects yun. Kaya schedule nyo mabuti para hindi naman bombarded naman yung mga estudyante. Pagpasok, lahat na lang tuturo nyo. Of course not. Okay? So yung AI, that's an example. Yung mga, ayan, yan si Alexa. Mga chatbots, meron na yan ngayon. Mga alam niyo naman estudyante niyo. Baka mamaya tayo lang hindi nakakaalam. Ano? And another thing, ito daw yung mga major types of strategies that have emerged from previous research in SRL, asking students to consider how they learn online, providing pacing support, monitoring engagement with instructional materials, and supporting families. Okay? And we are aware yung asking students to consider how they learn online. Diniscuss na natin. Providing, later on, I will discuss this one. Providing pacing support, monitoring engagement. Okay? So asking students to consider how they learn online. Okay? So decide what online sources to use or what search terms would be helpful. Diba? We know na they are using internet for searching, pero turuan na rin natin. Diba? Alam naman natin na keywords lang. Kapag maghahanap ka ng very relevant information, keywords lang kailangan mong gamitin. You don't have to type all the questions. Okay? Then generate questions. This one, yung dapat ang estudyante daw, they can generate questions and do searching and then report. So these are the things asking students to consider how they learn in online spaces. So dapat you have, they will decide what online sources, tapos noon, develop among them how to generate questions, do the searching, and then make a report, make a discussion from what they have found out. Para hindi naman copy-paste, ano? Natatakot tayo sa copy-paste eh. Pero bigay naman tayo ng follow-up questions para naman hindi copy and paste. Okay? Ito naman, providing pacing support. So what do you mean when we say providing pacing support? So naka-highlight sa akin dito, captivated by staying online for long periods. Bakit? What do we have in providing supports? Kasi some students, the days might blend into one another or they may become captivated by staying online for long periods. Nakakapagod din yan. Nakakapagod din na lagi ka nakatingin sa module. So what can we give to our students? Differences in access to the internet and the type of device may also cause fatigue for some learners. Alam niyo ba na yung bang mawalan lang ng internet sa mga nag-online, nakaka-stress na yun sa kanila. Sabagay tayo rin, stress din eh. Pero there are sometimes sa atin, minsan nagpapasalamat na tayo walang internet kasi nakapagpahinga tayo, di ba? Pero in our students, kaka-stress sa kanila yun pag wala silang connection. So, try to imagine, nag-uumpisa pa lang yung online distance learning, paano nila i-continue yung pag-aaral nila? So, wala silang gadget, wala silang internet connection. Okay? And another possibility is that students might be overwhelmed by the cognitive demands of the content. Kasi tingnan pa lang nila yung module, hindi na nila maintindihan. And potentially complex digital interfaces. Pero alam nyo ba na based on our evaluation of flexible learning modalities in the university, one of the advantages of the pandemic, of the implementation of online distance learning, na enhance daw ang kanilang technical skills. The same with the teachers. Ang mga teachers naging techie, the same with the students. Nalaman daw nila yung mga iba't ibang apps na hindi naman nila nagagamit during face-to-face. At least nakakakita sila ng advantages, di ba? Hindi puro negative. Okay? And being overwhelmed for extended periods could be detrimental to learners' long-term achievement as well as their self-efficacy as online learners. Kaya yung iba dyan, o yung iba nga sabi nyo, nag-stop na. Hindi na nila kaya, di ba? Okay. So, there are some parents, sabi ni, ito kay Ma'am Maria, control exposure. Parents na alam nyo na, they are not always at home to control their their children, or minsan mas matapang pa yung mga anak nila, 'di ba? Sa mga mas matapang pa ang mga anak kaysa sa nanay. Yes, distraction before body for learning na ang cellphone. So in these times, true po 'yun. So hindi natin alam kung ano ba ang kagandahan ng cellphone, pero one thing that we have to consider na na pagpapatuloy ang pag-aaral because of technology. Okay? So overall, pacing is an individualized negotiation that will require vigilance from those supporting the learners, teachers, and on-site mentors, our parents and our guardians. Totoo naman yun eh. So, yun nga, sabi ko nga sa inyo, isama niyo sa orientation. Isama niyo sa orientation ang mga parents para you can also give this some strategies with them na kailangan mai-control din nila yung exposure. Dapat may schedule. Mamaya didiscuss ko rin yun, okay? Eto, so yung providing pacing support, isa daw sa mga strategies. Previous research pacing support has come in the form of a guide where students have due dates. Eto, so napaka-importante ng due dates. Hindi pwede na ipasa nyo kung kailan nyo gustong ipasa. Kahit minsan, kahit hindi nasusunod ang due dates, ang importante, may due dates pa rin. Because these due dates will also help the students to manage their own task. Diba? Yung activities nila para nagkakaroon sila ng idea ano yung ipaprioritize nila. Siyempre, kung ano yung unang ipapasa, yun ang ipaprioritize nila. And in that way, we are helping our students to become self-regulated learners. Meron ng part ng guidelines ba naman? Huwag daw kaming mag-set ng due dates at ng deadlines at payagan kahit kailan magpasa. Okay lang kayo? Sino nakaisip na parang hindi kami pumayag doon? Why are we going to allow our students to pass kahit kailan nila gusto? Diba? Bakit ganun? So, sino nag-isip ng guidelines na to? Pero wala, of course, walang teachers na sumunod doon sa guidelines na yun. Bakit kami? When we are setting guidelines, we are, tandaan nyo, when we are setting guidelines, hindi natin pinapahirapan ng estudyante natin. But we are helping our students na maging organized sila. Ewan ko sino nakaisip na, pero di namin sinunod yun. Kasi against yun sa alam natin kung paano natin didisiplinahin ng mga estudyante natin. So maybe you're asking me, so ano ma'am nangyari kapag late na sa due date? Zero mo ba? Siyempre hindi. Okay, ang ginagawa ko lang, part ng rubric ko is always, ano ba yung part? There's always timeline in my rubrics. Para kapag nagpasa siya, syempre, kunwari, late siya ng 1 day, eto yung score niya. Pero hanggang 5 lang yun. Late siya ng 2 days, eto lang yung score niya. So, ibig sabihin, kung late talaga siya, sa dulo na siya magpapasa, check ko pa rin yun. May -5 na siya, tapos titingnan ko yung quality. Talagang tinitingnan ko yung quality ng work niya. Kasi dapat late na nga siya, tapos maganda yung work niya. Pero syempre, we still accept late. Tapos ako hanggat hindi ako nag-check, kahit may due date ako, hanggat di ako nag-check, walang late sa akin. Kasi kasalanan ko rin yun. Di rin ako nakakapag-check on time. Okay? Kaya ganun ginagawa ko. Punctuality in submitting. Meron pa kami isang tawag eh. Forgot. Letter C ang umpisa. Baka maisip nyo, Ma'am Mary Ann. Letter P pala. Sorry, promptness. Promptness yung ginagamit namin dun sa rubric. Promptness para kapag hindi siya nagsasabit at time, sure na meron na siyang deduction. Wala na silang reklamo naman doon, ano? Okay, so monitoring student engagement with instructional materials. Yes, promptness yon. Okay, so this question naman, what are your ways in monitoring your students during the new normal? Ano yung mga ways nyo to monitor your students? What are your ways in monitoring your students during the new normal? Module lang? Ayun, through messenger, group chat. Oo nga naman. So siguro ang gulo ng buhay nyo, no? Kasi ang dami yung GC. Tama? Bawat section may GC kayo. So kung ilan yung section na tinuturuan nyo, doon sila nag-react, ano? Kung ilang section tinuturuan nyo, may GC kayo. Alam, Diyos ko po, sa totoo lang, yung GC nakakagulo ng buhay ko. Kahit yung mga co-teachers ka pa, may grupo sa ganyan, eto naman yung gagawin, GC na naman. May parents pa po. Ay, nako, sa Ma'am Jesseline sabi niya, may parents pa po. Sabi niya, Marie. O, diba? Kasi ganun ang feeling ko din. Pag may GC, nagugulo yung buhay ko. Kaya, nakamute. Saka wala akong GC sa mga estudyante ko because I'm maximizing the Google Classroom. Google Classroom yung ginagamit namin. Ang chat ko lang ay president. Sabi ko nga sa inyo kasi nasa college ako. Saka nagugulo ng mundo ko sa GC. Saka pag nagbigay ako, kaya walang GC, walang masyadong tanong, ina-apply ko sinasabi ko sa inyo. Pag nagbigay ako ng activity, very clear yan. May rubrics. Okay? Tapos alam nila na kailangan nilang gawin yun kasi hindi ko sasagot yung tanong nila. Ang sagot sa tanong nila yung next meeting namin. Pag may tanong kayo, tanong nyo lahat sa akin. Kasi magulo na rin yung buhay ko sa ibang trabaho. Ayoko na kako kayong idamay pa. Okay? Kaya may parents pa po. Diyos ko. Hindi pa kasama yung nag-PM kasi nahihiya mag sa GC. Okay. Nako, that is our life, part of being a teacher. Okay, so when students suddenly stop attending or when their performance declines, those may be signs of affective disruption. So ito na yung nagwo-worry ka na kasi alam mo na there's something wrong with their emotional stability, di ba? Yung sa status nila emotionally. Also, learners who do not understand or feel they lack the skills or resources to complete, it may avoid the task. Siyempre, di ba, yung hindi nga nila naiintindihan, paano nila gagawin? Maybe you are imagining your students. Hindi nila naiintindihan yung module, walang tumutulong sa kanila. Alam nyo, imbis na mainis na lang, parang naaawa na lang kayo. Tama ba? Parang naawa na lang kayo sa bata instead na mainis kayo. Teacher pa more, sabi ni Sir Giovanni. Hindi po applicable Google Meet. Island School po kami, mahina signal. Oo nga, yun din ang problema. Kaya chat-chat na lang. Buti na lang ang Facebook. Napaka-helpful ng Messenger. Kaya nga, this is what we are trying to say. Na simplify natin para, and then make it sure na, anyway, nagawa na natin to, contextualize yung mga modules natin, para yung mga resources, makikita lang nila sa bahay nila so that they will not avoid the task. Okay? Tapos hindi po lahat sumasagot sa chat. Ang laki ng problema ng mga teachers, ano? Ay, nako. Okay, and one salient strategy from research in online teaching and learning has been to closely monitor student participation in and engagement with instructional materials. Paano ang submission ng module? Weekly or twice a month? Paano submission nyo ng module? Weekly or twice a month? Weekly. Okay, masisipag. Weekly, okay? Maganda naman yun, weekly, para na-check nyo, di ba? At naibabalik nyo rin the next week. Dapat nalalaman nila kung tama or mali yung sagot nila. So, if that is module, so pwede yan, weekly. Kami nga, nag-module kami twice a month. Wala nang nagmo-module ngayon. Kasi AOL. Pero kami, weekly rin ang submission namin. Okay? Pero pag mas mahirap-hirap, depende sa teacher. Okay? And such strategies leverage technology to capture learners' usage of instructional materials. Yung iba nga daw, hindi naman nakakapag-online. Pero of course, when you are using, there are some of teachers here na nasa private. I know that you have your own learning management system. So that is one way on how you're going to monitor your students. At alam nyo ba na ang mga LMS, you can invite parents. Yung mga ganong LMS. Tama ba? Sino may LMS? Sino yung mga rich kid dito na galing? May mga answer sheets walang name. Sino ang galing sa private school? May mga LMS po yan. Are you inviting the parents in the LMS para ma-monitor? Or are you always communicating, sending email to the parents? Okay? Napakahirap gawin dito sa Pilipinas kasi nga developing country tayo. Okay? And you may also use some helpful sites. Diba? Such as content-specific short topical review videos, general question engines. Okay? I know that our students are using this one. So, ibig sabihin, tayo naman as teachers, dapat we also have wider knowledge about technology. Hindi naman pwedeng, dapat naman nagkaroon ng upgrade yung technology skills mo nung face-to-face pa at ngayong pandemic dahil once that you know these different websites, you can share this with your students. Yung mga estudyante ko nga sa computer education in the graduate school, sabi nila, ma'am, alam niyo po, napaka-helpful ng computer education subject natin. Ngayon lang namin nalalaman na dito pala sa mga websites na to, may mga simulation na pwede namin gamitin. May mga app po pala na ganito na pwede rin namin i-share sa mga students natin. Tandaan po natin na during the time of pandemic, equity matters most than equality. Diba? Kasi hindi natin pwedeng i-take lahat ng estudyante natin ay same na situation. Meron dyan talagang may gadget, may internet connection. Huwag natin sabihin na lahat. Diba? Tsak dyan, merong naiiba. Hindi naman sila equal ng sitwasyon sa buhay. So, what I'm just trying to say is, if you have this kind of students who can go online, do not deprive them. Sabi mo, majority of my students naman, wala namang ganyan. Paano yung ilan? Ilan sa estudyante mo, isinama mo dun sa majority? Hindi ka share? Hindi ka ma-share na, ay dito sa website na to, you can understand more about this topic in the chemistry kasi may simulation. Diba? Wag nating ima-majority, one size fits all yung mga estudyante natin, yung klase natin. Kasi they are not coming from the same situation. So, yun lang. Ayoko ng majority wins. I do not buy that kind of thinking. Okay? So, and another thing, the likely challenges come in helping learners know when to use these tools. Kaya dapat ikaw alam mo kung kailan gagamitin yung tools na yon at alam mo kung anong websites yung i-recommend mo in that subject, in that grade level. Because you are also aware about these websites. Ikaw mismo na pag-aralan mo yun, tinry mong pag-aralan. Okay? And the next thing is providing social, emotional support for families. So do you think parents are doing pandemic? Yeah. Agree ni Ma'am Jack. Nakalimutan ko na. Okay? Ni Ma'am Mary Joy. Ayan, ako, your internet connection is unstable na naman po ako. Yes, some parents. So, do you think parents are doing their part in the education? Yun ang sinasabi ko. There are some parents doing their part. Baka mamaya binilan ng laptop, binilan ng malaki-laking cellphone, smartphone, nagpakabit ng line. Diba, ng internet connection. Paano naman itong mga parents na nag-e-effort for their children? Iwa one size fits all mo ba to? Sayang yung effort nila kung sasabihin mo na, sige, mag-module na lang kayo. Eto, sagutan nyo na lang, wag na tayong mag-online. That's what I'm trying to say. Na dapat hindi natin tinitake as one ang sitwasyon ng mga estudyante natin. Kaya nga tayo, sinasabi natin that we are not applying blended learning in our situation. Kaya hindi ka nag-aaral ng technology. Hindi mo ba nare-realize na ikaw na hindi ka nag-aaral ng technology, naiiwan ka na ng mga ibang teachers that they are trying to learn? Diba, dapat kahit hindi mo ina-apply yung online distance learning, equip mo pa rin naman yung sarili mo. Baka mamaya malipat ka sa school. Diba? Malipat ka sa school na gumagamit na ng online learning, or that is also something na para din naman sa iyo yun, di ba? Hindi naman kailangan lagi para sa iba yung ginagawa mo. Pwede rin naman para sa sarili mo. That's why you are trying to learn or upgrade your technological skills. Okay? So providing social and emotional support for families. Okay, considering the different perceptions, expectations, and capabilities parents or other on-site mentors might bring to online work, establishing consistent communication patterns about how to provide support for SRL seems vital to successfully transitioning to online work. Kaya nga ito yung top tips for parents on home. 'Di ba? When we are giving them orientation, iniisip natin na dapat kung kahit maliit ang bahay, mag-provide ng learning space for their children. Na kapag nakita yung table, maliit na table at chair na yon, mag-aaral ka na. At ito'y napaka-importante. Daily schedule. Natanong ko yung pamangkin ko, anong oras ka gumigising? 12 po. Diyos ko po, 12. O sige, 12. O 12, lunch ka. 12 to 1, lunch. Ng lunch, 1, mag-ML ka. Pero 2 mo, mag-module ka, ha? Oo naman siya. Kasi hindi naman siya ginawa ng gano'n ng ano niyo eh. Ng nano eh. Kaya tapos mag-module ka, o tapos kain, tapos ML ulit. Yung para bang nakikipag-usap ako na para lang gawin yung module niya, let us make a schedule na nandoon pa rin yung pag-ML niya, activity niya, paglalaro niya, 'di ba? Pagre-rest niya, pero nagagawa niya pa rin yung module niya. So I think yung daily schedule, one thing that we have to emphasize among our parents. Okay? Para ma-predict naman yung routine. Kasi how are you going to predict? How the students will be able to predict their routine kung wala naman silang schedule? Diba? Sa school nga, pag may pumapasok, may schedule eh. Bakit dapat sa bahay din? May schedule. So I think ito yung isa sa dapat pagawa nyo sa parents together with their children para may agreement sila. Okay? At tapos another thing, yung goals and progress dapat na monitor din ng parents. Okay? Managing frustrations. Hindi yung nauuwi lagi sa batukan, sa paluan kapag nagtuturuan. Di ba? Narinig niyo na ba yon? Yung mga ganong sitwasyon ng magulang at anak kapag nagtuturuan ng module, nag-aaway na lang. Yun yung ending. And closeness and connection. These are the things that we have to give to our parents. Siguro pag kukuha ng module, may konting, wag lang basta kukuha na meron kahit mga 20 minutes ay nakakausap natin sila na parang we are reminding them. Yes, may pumalo si Lola. Yun. So, yun, kakausapin natin when they are returning the modules, giving the modules, sana meron din tayong parang we are meeting and greeting them. Pero actually, nagbibigay na tayo ng some tips. Okay? So, let us have the summary nung discussion natin ngayon. Second part ng discussion ko, motivation and learning control, cognition and structured learning, reconciling learner control and structure in K-12. Tapos dalawa dyan, asking students to consider how they learn in online spaces, providing pacing support. Number 4, monitoring student engagement with instructional materials, and providing social and emotional support for families. Okay? So, I hope that you learned something. Yung alam ko, iba ginagawa nyo na, pero sana may nadagdag, ano? Meron bang nadagdag from your strategies? May nadagdag ba because you attended this webinar? Okay, so ang conclusion natin, although the pandemic caught most of us unaware, ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, huwag na magsisihan. Lahat naman hindi handa. And led to substantial disruption by considering previous research and making reasonable inferences about the future, the work of online schooling can improve for young learners. So just simply saying na we have to acknowledge the existence of technology, because without the use of technology, how are we going to continue learning and make it sure that we are using this technology so that we are helping our students to develop and become self-regulated learners through the different tools available